when we talk about the pros and cons of utilitarianism. So what did you like about it? What bothered you about it?
It's simple.
Super simple.
It's thorough.
It's thorough. Elaborate a little bit on thorough.
Just going through the calculus list, it really helps you make up your mind.
Right, it takes into account lots of different angles and perspectives. In fact, in a lot of ways, you could say it's like hyper-democratic. You literally could legislate morality with this theory. In the sense you simply vote for what you believe is ethical, and you don't vote for what you think is unethical. It's also flexible. Is that an A?
No, that's right.
Flexible and adaptive. In other words, if you voted for something, like when DDT first came out, it was seen as the wonder pesticide, and we could grow more crops. It just did so much for us on so many different levels of pest reduction. But later we found out that the DDT was actually poisoning our groundwater. It was causing a depletion in migratory birds because their shells wouldn't thicken enough to protect the unhatched chicks. And it was also starting to mutate even the human population, cause birth defects, things like that. And so what was at first a good thing for the multitude turned out to be a really bad thing. But unlike divine command theory or other theories where you just kind of have to go with it regardless of the consequences, if the consequences of your decisions turn out to be bad, you're free and flexible to change them. And so we made laws banning DDT once we realized it was actually hurting more people than it was helping. So that's what I mean by it's flexible. You're not just stuck with a course. You can change your mind if something starts to go poorly. I mean, some things you can't change, right, because it's too late. You already did it. And that's kind of the fear with some of our modern technology and cloning and stem cell research and gene manipulation. It's kind of like, well, what if we introduce something into the environment and then we realize it's a bad idea? So that could be a downside. Some things you can't change. What seemed like a good idea in the past, now you realize it was a bad idea. It's too late. You've kind of let the genie out of the bottle. You're kind of stuck with your decision. I'll just put it. Some things can't change. Kind of our first day of class, I gave you the example of Tim and Dan, the deontological and teleological ethical theorists, if you remember. And part of this is you really don't know whether your action is right or wrong until all the results are in. It's kind of like the jury is out. You just act, you do things with the hope that it will help more people, but you really won't know if you're a moral or immoral person until you see the consequences. And that's kind of a downside of these consequentialist-based theories. You're kind of acting, in a sense, on faith that you've reasoned out the best possible decision. You kind of looked at the projections, you've looked at where these actions are likely to lead, and you make your best guess, in a sense, on the data you have. But if you have faulty data, or you're missing a piece of information, you might end up making a really bad choice or decision. But you won't even know it was bad until you see the consequences of your action. But at that point, you're stuck with the consequences of your action. So I don't know if that bothers anyone, but that would bother me. I want to know what I'm doing is right when I do it, not having to wait maybe sometime years to find out what the consequences were for the choices I made. And that's a problem with all consequentialist theories. You don't know until you do the tally at the end. Are there pros or cons?
Low conflict. If you follow the mathematical formula, it's not something where you're going to have different ideals coming into conflict. You'll just have a more or less set choice.
And especially if, like in the United States, you make allowances for minority groups, like you say, you know what, we think it's best for the majority if we protect minority rights, to a degree. I mean, we're still going to go in a certain direction based on the will of the majority, but it's nice to know that even if you're in the minority, at least in this country, we've made even room for you, that you have certain privileges and rights that we're not going to take away from you just because the majority wants to, at least for the moment. Yes?
It seems like there would be little to no remorse for decisions.
Well, right, because it's based on reason.
And for the better good of people.
And live and learn, right?
Yeah.
If you made a bad calculation, you change it. You don't beat yourself up about it. You don't have to feel guilt and
Just
shame.
do it better next time.
Right, do it better next time. Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, and you've probably heard people try to console consequentialists who've made bad choices. They simply would tell them, you didn't know, or you couldn't have known. You couldn't have known that would have been the outcome. It was just completely out of left field. It's not your fault. Okay. So, in a lot of ways, it's true. It's not. I mean, we can't know all these sorts of answers.
For a con, you could say human emotion, because reason might tell you to do one thing, but emotions might want you to do something else, kind of like
The
that
kid.
analogy with the kid and the train.
I mean, that could be a pro, too. Especially if you're a Vulcan. Because emotions mess us up all the time. I mean, how many good emotional decisions have you made in your life, if you really think about it? I mean, that's where you get buyer's remorse, marriage remorse. Which kind of gum you bought remorse. I mean, it just goes on and on. Because you made an emotional decision. Yeah. This is not nice because you're right. It has all the benefits of a well-reasoned response. You're not just going by a feeling or a spontaneous whim. You're really kind of trying to think and work through these. And the more people you have involved, you get more angles, more perspective, and you get to add their reasoning to yours. So it's excellent for making group decisions. It's like when you're out with a bunch of friends after a game or something, and you're trying to decide you want to go to Taco Bell or Pizza Hut or whatever. And you just vote. You just vote. And the majority is happy with its decision. And maybe one or two people isn't happy with what you decided, but the other 8, 10 people are. So you accomplish your goal. Happiness for the masses. Some people have claimed that the masses, though, don't know what's best for them. And so we need to make these decisions for them. I, as an educator, would probably fall into this category. A couple of years ago, we had, they do these in-services at the beginning of each semester, and they brought in this guy to give us a motivational talk. And his claim to fame was he had sold more carrots in the United States than any other person last year. And so he's giving us this little talk on how to be better teachers. And one of the first things he tells us is, the customer is always right. Or the consumer. That's you guys. You're the consumers and the customers, and we're supposed to give you what you want, when you want it, how you want it. And I was just thinking, I think we're having a breakdown between carrots and students. Because I'm not selling carrots. I'm not just trying to make some Vons or grocery store happy.